Hey, this is Danny Eny with Firepole Marketing, and you're listening to Stephanie O'Brien's Moved by Purpose podcast.
I don't want to deflate the idea here that life is wonderful, but, you have to work to make life good. Yeah, you have to work hard. It takes work.
Are you longing to know what your purpose is? Are you on the wrong career path? Do you feel like there must be more to life? Don't worry, there's hope. It's time to be moved by purpose. Now your host, Stephanie O'Brien.
Hey, you're listening to the Moved by Purpose podcast, and it is your host, Stephanie O'Brien. I am excited to be with you today. Today's guest is Dr. Joni Kano, and she is the author of Flying Without a Helicopter, How to Prepare Young People for Work and Life. She is the president of Flexible Work Solutions, a consulting firm that specializes in leadership assessment and development. She received her doctorate from UC Berkeley and her bachelor's from Harvard. Needless to say, we are dealing with one smart cookie here. And without any further delay, let's welcome Joni. Welcome to the Moved by Purpose podcast, Joni. It's an honor to have you on today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we were just talking briefly a little bit before the official recording of this episode that you have written your book, Flying Without a Helicopter, How to Prepare Young People for Work and Life. I'd love to learn more about that book and what kind of events in your life or things maybe even in your business that led you to write this book. What inspired you?
Yeah, well, I tell you, it was people in the workplace that inspired me to write this. I guess there were two facets of it. The first part is I do a lot of executive work, coaching and consulting with companies and developing leaders. And I ran into the issue where people were complaining very strongly about challenges they were having with this next generation of people coming into the workplace, the millennials, and finding that they were complaining about certain specific things, like the people weren't as resilient, the communication skills were lacking, people were not as independent, they weren't able to work independently and do things without coming back to them for questions constantly. And so I was hearing this a lot, and at the same time, I had a kid of my own. I still have her. She's 14 now, but she was much younger when I was putting these ideas together. And I saw what was going on around me and in the schools and in our society. And I found that parents were protecting their kids a lot more than we were protected as kids growing up. And they were doing things for the kids. They were trying to make it so that the kids didn't have challenges moving forward, going in and talking to the teachers, solving their problems for the kids. Examples would be kids who aren't invited to a birthday party. Parents would go in and call the other parents and say, look, you need to invite my kid because she feels bad. Teachers, seriously, teachers have issues at school. Go in and blaming the teacher. Look, you need to raise the grade on this because my kid's doing a good job. Right. Yep. So when you get parents behaving that way, the kids learn how to get through in life, and they don't learn those skills on how to deal with these difficult situations and how to overcome them. They don't learn how to communicate with their teachers and say, look, I'm having a challenge here. Can you help me with the math or something like that? Because the parents are doing it for them. So when they grow up, fast forward to the workplace, you've got a generation of young workers who haven't had those experiences and opportunities to learn those skills, and they're coming in, a little bit behind in the life skills department. And it's not necessarily something that they intended. It was just a product of the times they grew up in. And then we have, the older people in the workplace who are not tolerant of it, and we have this big clash of the generations. But my book is really about seeing the connection there of, wow, this is what's going on as we're raising these kids and how they turn out as adults and what skills they need in the workplace to be successful, and helping these younger folks, even if they're already at work, and they've been through this. It's never too late to learn. I coach all the way up to people who are managing out of the workplace, but also the younger folks who aren't there yet. So helping them develop some of these skills and acknowledging what is important. It's not just the technical skills. I mean, so many people have been so well educated. I mean, the millennials are the most well-educated generation ever. They have so many strengths as well. They're just amazing at technology and multitasking and all these things. But when it comes to, making the best of the situation, getting through these tough times and working independently, that's just not how they've been raised. So they need to learn how to do some of that. And that's where I focus on the book.
Yes. Oh, you said so many really good things here. Now, I'm a millennial myself. Starting a business has been the best thing for me. If you want to develop life skills,
yes.
I think starting a business will really help you learn those real quick.
Yep.
So, but I actually work with college students as well to prepare for life after college, and I'll do things like job search strategy workshops and training and presentations. And one of the biggest things that I really try to emphasize in there is the importance of what they call soft skills, which is basically life skills, because they are, just in agreeing with you, I am fascinated by the talent that these graduating college students have. Like, my mind is blown by what they have accomplished and what they can bring. I'm like, what? That's crazy. And I mean, I graduated in the fall of 2009. It wasn't that long ago, but I don't remember, unless I'm not giving myself enough credit, or couldn't see it from being outside of college and looking back. Like, I personally don't remember having as much talent as they do now.
Right.
And I think maybe because technology has advanced so much that they have a lot of tools they know how to utilize. But one of the things, I just did a presentation on Saturday, and one of the things I noticed was they have all the credentials and technical skills and qualifications, but my heart was almost like they're about to enter into life after college. And this is going to be a great learning experience for them. But, some of them they just lacked the skill of really just, I don't want to say hard work. I want to be careful because they do know how to work hard. They've earned a degree. But it's more of just that people getting along with others and just that resilience of, look, you're not always going to get your own way. You can apply for that promotion and get looked over. And I was saying things like that. Just because you have a degree doesn't mean that life is handed to you on a silver platter. It just means you have a degree.
Right. Yeah. I'd like to add to that. And one thing that's also coming up for younger people, which is another real tragic thing, is an early career burnout. People in their 20s are burning out more than ever before, in part because of how much effort they put into getting through school, through college. Younger people have spent their childhoods putting their resumes together. When I was a kid, we were out playing, we had childhoods, and I think now people are really focused so early on getting those skills and doing your homework and studying and making sure you have this activity and that activity. They're not actually enjoying themselves and having the downtime to have a balanced life and take care of themselves physically and mentally. And so when they get to the workplace, they feel like they've given up so much to get to their place where they're at now that they deserve it. Now, I would feel that way too. Right? That makes sense. But the problem is they've been promised so much all along, this light at the end of the tunnel, the treasure at the end of the rainbow. And when you get out there in the workplace, you find out you're at the bottom again. You're starting all over. That's really tough. And if you haven't protected yourself and given yourself the balance and taken care of yourself physically and mentally to be resilient, that's going to crush you when you get there. And we're seeing that so much more often than ever before. And even in college, we're seeing that. The people are just so structured and working so hard that they're not taking care of themselves. And that I can't emphasize that enough. I don't know if you find this as an entrepreneur as well, that, you need to take time out for yourself and you don't always think about it. It's hard, but you have to make sure to do that.
I'm very intentional about giving myself Sundays off, which took me a while to do. And before I thought I was taking Sundays off, which really wasn't. Just because I wasn't actively on the computer, maybe I considered that a day off. But completely like forcing myself to not strategically plan, brainstorm, think like about the business and next steps, to truly 100% shut it off and unplug from the business took me a long time to be able to truly do. But man, I savor those Sundays now, because come Monday, I am so recharged and rejuvenated and ready to I have so much more creative space and energy. And I'm actually excited for Monday. And I do love what I do. And I used to always say, can you imagine being excited for Monday? Well, then it just devastated me when, I'm all about work you love and creating work you love and doing work that matters and that's fulfilling. And then I reached this burnout point myself where it was like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to dread Monday. And I felt so guilty and hypocritical. And it wasn't because I was not taking time to care for myself. It was like a labor of love. I love what I did, but I was thinking too much, working too hard, doing too, it was just too dedicated almost, that I didn't allow myself the rest that I really, really needed.
Right.
So,
for one thing that's going on right now is turning off the electronics. I mean, having some downtime where you're not on 4 different screens or chatting with several people at the same time, just letting your mind a chance to just shut down for a little while and rest.
It's so good. You touched on so many points. I really love that. And that explains even further what they call a quarter life crisis.
Yes.
Where you work so hard and I was in a youth group growing up at my church, and even the leaders would be amazed at how much these middle schoolers and high school students had so much to do. Not only did we have school, but we had some extracurricular activity to do plus work, a part-time job to do after school. So we did a 7-hour or 8-hour day in school, and then would get home, have a small window of opportunity to do homework, and then we were out doing our extracurricular activity or going to work or both. That's just a full plate, and you're 13.
Yeah.
Not working. 13-year-olds aren't working, but once you're 16 and you're in high school, that was how it was for a lot of my peers. Now, my parents were very intentional about kind of cutting off, you can have no more than 2 extracurricular activities on a weekday. You can't have more than that. Because I had a lot of friends that had, dance 5 days a week. They were there till 10 at night. Just all kinds of things, because you're building that portfolio. You had to build up your experience for that college application. And then when you're in college, you have to build up this experience, because we are the first generation where you have to not only have to have a degree, but experience. So it's no longer your degree is enough. It's your degree and you have to have relevant experience. There's just a lot going on.
Right.
And there's no wonder that they're burned out and you hit that quarter life crisis of, I worked so hard. Now I'm in this place of employment. I have all this student loan debt. I'm getting this entry level wage. I would like more than just a cost of living raise and can't get it. I'm overlooked by promotions. I personally think that contributes to why they hop so much. They're perceived as being disloyal. Within 6 months, if they get another opportunity, they'll go over there. Gosh, I know a lot of people that had, in the last 4 years, have had 6 different jobs. Because they keep getting offered different opportunities, and that's how they move up. That's how they get the pay they want and the opportunities they want. And they're all about passion, but yeah, they're also, millennials are notorious for being called entitled.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, a couple of things come up for me when you're talking about all this, and one of them is having a little bit of patience. We talk about the passion, but having patience, and that comes along with resilience. And we find that, people who hopping around a lot aren't necessarily getting the experience to really be successful at something, because, just because you've done something once, it doesn't mean that you've really learned it or are good at it. Sometimes it takes a while to really practice something, and we think about this in terms of practicing piano or sports or something. You just sight read something, and it doesn't mean that you can play it well. You have to put the time and the effort in and really focus in on each little passage and all of that. And it's the same thing at work. So when we have people who are hopping around, yeah, it's maybe trying to have one goal here or get the money or get this level or something like that, but not necessarily getting the experience in terms of those life skills and learning the resilience and learning the frustration of having to wait and keep doing the same thing over and over again. And then you talk about the entitlement piece as well. And I want to bring up something there too, and that's an expectations issue. I mean, we have expectations about work, but we also have expectations about life. Millennials and, people just growing up now too, I mean, we've had it pretty good lately in our society. People are better off than they've been in a while. So people have grown up in pretty cushy lifestyles for a lot of people. I mean, not necessarily all aspects of this, but considering, you grew up with more than probably previous generations. Houses are bigger. We have more cars, bigger cars. Food is fancier than it used to be. You look at all these different measures there. And when we get out there in the workplace and we have student loans and we're at still the bottom of the rung, of the ladder, we find that we need to have expectations that are appropriate with that too. You can't go out and eat all the time. You can't have this wonderful apartment necessarily, your own place. You might need to get roommates. You might need to scale back on your expenses. And I think that is a challenge as well. It's this expectation that we should have these really nice, amazing lives when we're, right out of school. It's not necessarily a realistic expectation, and it leads to a lot of frustration there too.
I completely agree. I've experienced that myself. I'll admit to my mindset when I graduated college, I invested all this money in, and I hated the term my dad would say all the time, you have to pay your dues.
Yeah.
And I'm like, isn't a college degree enough paying my dues? And he's like, no. Because he's like, I mean, what was I doing the last 4 years? So, and I think that is the mindset for a lot of graduating college students of like, I invested all this money in my degree and I have it and now I'm hot shot.
Yeah. No, and I think they get that in part from the people and the adults around them too who keep saying, look, this is what you need to do. Then you'll get your dream job. They've been promised this wonderful life after college. Just get through this. Just keep doing a little bit more and then you'll get there. And
you can get everything you want right away.
But, I mean, sadly, you get out there and it's just like the happily ever after. The fairy tales always end at the happily ever after, and you don't realize once you, land your prince or something that life is difficult to get through, It's not all rosy, and that's the part we need to prepare people for, to say, look, you're going to have to find a way to take a deep breath and gather your strength to get through this next phase as well. And, I mean, I can tell you, I'm dealing with people of all ages. I did a workshop on stress management for teens just this weekend. And, boy, was it tough. Like you were saying, these kids are so overscheduled and trying to figure out how to manage that and give them some tools on how to de-stress. I coach executives who are going through the same thing. They're in their 50s, right? And then I also did a workshop for people who are retiring, figuring out how to get their lives where they want them to be. And they're 70 and still going through some of this. So I don't want to deflate the idea here that life is wonderful, but, you have to work to make life good. Not a job, but just work. Yeah, you have to work hard. It takes work.
I'm going to quote that. That was, you have to work. You have to work to make life good. Yes. The interview I had before you, we were talking about, what did he quote? Gabriel quoted, if you're growing, you're going to be faced with new challenges consistently.
Yeah.
And for me, and it might be just my generation, and I think it was that entitlement mentality that I had and had to overcome myself, was I really feel like this is my passion, my dream. Other people call it your destiny, your calling, whatever term you want to use, your purpose. And I just thought, okay, I feel 100% in alignment and so fulfilled. This is what I am meant to do. This is why I exist in this world. Yet, it has not been an easy journey. And I think that was like a huge shock for me. Or not, I don't think, I know that was a huge shock for me. I think some people are, and this could be mainly just millennials that might struggle with this. It's like, well, once I get clear on my purpose, I think life will be so much easier. It's like, no, I think life will become much more complicated. It's like, no, I think you're just beginning. That was my experience and stuff. So another thing people have said for, who I work with, there's been older people that have said, like, I don't want to sound like I'm hating on my own generation. I'm definitely not. But I'm just reporting basically what the older generation has said is, like, they don't have the patience to work with millennials because they think they know everything. They just don't think that they need to learn anything new, which has not been my experience. I know a lot of people that are very eager to learn from the expertise of older people and stuff, but I don't know if you've run into that or if that's a common complaint that you hear from older generations or if that's actually the first time you've heard anyone make that statement.
Well, I might have heard it in different ways because I feel like people see that the younger generations wants to develop and they want to constantly learn new things. But having the patience, as I was talking about earlier, to do it more than once or to really hone the skills, I think is more of a challenge. It's not just the people in the generation, it's the technology that has changed our attention span. I mean, we look at when we expect things to get done now. When I was a kid, I hate to say this because, talk about aging myself, but we didn't have email. If you wanted to communicate with somebody, you either had to call them or you had to walk over to their house and knock on their door or write a letter if they're far away. But now we've got email, we've got instantaneous chatting on the phone and on the computers. And at work, that comes up too. We have these expectations and not just to get things done rapidly, but you're working on lots of things at the same time. So you can see that people's attention span has really decreased. And figuring out how to work with that, how to train yourself. I mean, it's funny because I was at a workshop last week as well on mindfulness training, right? And this is something that I was in this workshop thinking, this is really odd. Why do we have to train people to stop and focus on one thing at a time? That's what mindfulness is really about. Stop and just focus on your breath, for example. And it's like this is a modern problem, that we have to actually train our minds to do that because we don't. We focus on several things at the same time. We're so scattered that we're not even thinking about one thing at a time. And so this is the environment that people are in, and you just start tapping your feet and your fingers on the table because you're waiting anxiously for something to happen. You're not just calmly saying, okay, I'm just going to focus on this for a while. So it's something that learning that patience and learning how to appreciate something for longer and realizing that you're not just learning new stuff and having it streaming in, that there's depth to it. We do this in art sometimes too. You look at a painting and you can have a quick look at it and say, yeah, that's nice, Mona Lisa, whatever. I saw the Mona Lisa, great, what's next? But if you stand there for an hour, I know one professor who has their students look at a painting for 3 hours. I don't know if that sounds excruciating to me, but but after 3 hours, you have really noticed a lot about that painting. And it's stopping to think about that when you're at work and you want to do a job for a couple of years to really learn how to do that job and the subtleties and the politics of the company and how to maneuver through that, building key relationships, really honing in on your communication skills, learning how to coach people, learning how to do all these different things. It takes a while to really get good at it. And sometimes we forget that and we just want to move on. And so that's what I think might be some of what people are seeing as this impatience piece, that people are just so ready to move and do something new rather than appreciate or really understand or hone in the same thing for a little bit.
And you're not going to be good at it when you first start. And there are certain skills. I think it might take a while to discern. For me, I would try a new skill. Let's say, I give the example of how I wanted to learn how to sew. And my mom knows how to sew, and so I asked her to teach me. And I learned that it's extremely tedious, and those patterns require a rocket scientist to understand and interpret. They're like not well written. Like I want to complain, be like, we need to think of something different. But anyway, so when my sister was getting married, my mom and I decided to make a really cute apron for my sister. Now, an apron should be a very basic or a simple thing to make. We did not get an easy pattern. There was more pieces and stuff and involvement to this. At the end of the day, it turned out really cute. But I lost patience with it, and my mom ended up having to finish it. Because I couldn't sew a straight hem at all. I kept having to redo it over and over and over again. And I just was like, I don't have patience for this. This is way too tedious. Now, if I might try to do it again, I think I have a little bit more, or I believe I have more maturity to understand that learning is a process. At the same time, though, I also know how I am wired, and that really meticulous, tedious things are not necessarily my forte. Mm-hmm. It's not in my strength zone, although I believe you can develop your strength zone, or you can develop things that are not necessarily your strength. If there's something that is more in alignment with where I have a strength in, I am willing to put the patience and the discipline and the dedication in to develop it, even though I'm not that good at it. But if it's something that's totally out of how I'm wired for it, it's a struggle. So I don't know if you've run into that or if you even agree with any of that. Like, do you think it's just a matter of being patient and, like, getting over that it might not be something you're naturally strong in?
Well,
or if you should be in alignment with where you're gifted in and develop that?
Well, absolutely, that you need to go with your strengths and develop some of your weaknesses or spots that could be improved, but not necessarily focusing in on the things that are necessarily developmental areas, because if you don't have energy around it, it's probably not going to go well for you. So finding some of these strengths to leverage, either developing some of the other areas or teaming up with others who can help you with that. As you said, some people are much more able to deal with tedious work than others. There's certainly a strength there, and disposition are much better. You look at Olympic athletes, for example. Speaking of tedious work, running that 50-yard dash over and over and over and over and over again, right? I mean, that's not something that I would enjoy. There is going to be tedium in any job that you do, no matter what. There's tedium in every day. I'm psychologically minded. I think about these things. I get up in the morning, I'm like, boy, I have to brush my teeth again? I just did this yesterday or last night. It's, wow, this is so boring, but I get through it. So finding that way to get through tedium, that's going to be a challenge for everyone. There's going to be some of that, but you may not want to pick a job where that's the main part of it, right, where it's the real focus. If you're more of an ideas person, you might want to get something in strategy rather than the doing part of it. So I agree with you, Stephanie, that you need to be able to work with your strengths and develop what you need to be successful at your job. But I wouldn't necessarily go and attack something that you're terrible at to try to do it. That just would make you frustrated.
Now, how much do you know? This is just like a thought that randomly came to mind. Mm-hmm. In my experience, when I got my degree and pursued a career that I really believed I would love, I really did believe that, was completely crushed to find that it isn't happily ever after. Once you land your first job out of college, the job that I basically really wholeheartedly believed I would love was something I couldn't stand after about a year and a half into it. I think I made a lot of mistakes in my career or job search. I also think that college students, millennials, don't know what they don't know yet either. So I think career burnout or job dissatisfaction among millennials, I'm just curious if you think that part of it could be that they just didn't know what they didn't know. They didn't know to align their natural giftings and strengths and wiring into a job. Yes. So, for example, with social work, so I studied family studies, so I didn't even get a degree in social work, which probably would have tipped me off a little bit more closely to what social work really entails. So I didn't study that, but I ended up getting a job in social work because I had always intended on doing that. But the job I had was so heavy very detailed, very meticulous paperwork. And I am a huge people-oriented person, and that's why I wanted to be a social worker, because I wanted to have that relationship with my consumer client and really help them through whatever they were going through. I had intended on becoming a counselor and getting my master's, but I first wanted to get experience after earning my bachelor's to see if it was a good fit. Really grateful I had enough wisdom in that to do that. The reason I got burned out was because it wasn't anything like I thought it would be, and I was constantly having to do things that I needed people, not a computer screen.
Yep.
You know, like not more paperwork. And it just was so detail-oriented, which I didn't think social work was so heavily detail-oriented. You think that it's a people field, but it's so meticulous and paperwork.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I burned out. So I'm just curious, and I didn't know that. And I switched careers, and now I'm doing the business. So I just don't know if you run into that, if maybe they just were like, they didn't know.
No, absolutely.
And they're not in their strengths.
Yeah. No, this is something that comes up a lot. First of all, people, especially today, are picking careers where they think they can make a lot of money typically, or have a lot of impact, or be professionals, and they're getting advanced degrees and all this and putting just enormous resources into getting this professional title. It's sometimes coming from the individuals themselves. I think a lot of it's also coming from parents, right?
Oh, yep.
Right.
Yep.
So, parents say, I want to have this kid, who, does this for a living, or I want to have a star swimmer or soccer player or something like that, and so they put their kids in these programs and in these schools and in these places to get that. They closely monitor college applications to make sure they go to the right colleges and all this stuff to get what they want them to have. Well, are we looking at the fit of the child? That's first of all. I think there's a lot of that going on, and the kids themselves aren't necessarily looking at the fit. They're looking at the should-haves. What should I be doing? What am I supposed to do? I'm from Boston. What are we supposed to be doing, right? And rather than what's right for me. And I do a lot of career counseling. That's one of the things I do for people of all ages. And what we look at so much in that field is the job fit. I mean, obviously your interests are important and your skills are important, but what's the right environment for you? If you're a people person, you need to be in a people kind of job. And you could do that with pretty much any kind of background. Let's just say you get an engineering background or something like that, and you're a people person. Are you going to be a good designer? Yeah, probably that's going to be this tedious in the lab stuff that's going to drive you crazy. But if you go into sales, and you're selling electronic devices or, computers or something like that, and you really like this engineering aspect, that might be more for you. Or are you presenting at conferences, things like that. So finding the right environment, and there are several different aspects of that. And the first thing, like you said, Stephanie, is finding out what the job is about, right? There's a great resource online. It's really easy to get to. It's called ONET, O-N-E-T, and that's put on by the Department of Labor here in the United States. And they have job descriptions of pretty much every job that exists, at least that they know of. Got the government here, the Department of Labor, so they have a lot of resources to put this together. And you can go on there and look to see what kind of skills, what kind of daily tasks you'll be doing, and find out what to expect in the job. Also talking to people or doing some informational interviewing to learn what these jobs are like, to find out what the right fit is for you before you go in and invest all this time and money to get that point. You can find that once you have some of these skills and these interests, you can find the right type of job to do. But if you want to get something totally different career-wise, you might want to check that out earlier on before you've invested so much of your time and money in the college or advanced degrees as well.
I completely agree, and I just did this job search training presentation on Saturday, and one of the things I did say was the importance of job shadowing or informational interviews. Mm-hmm. At that point, though, and I still think it's relevant, I still think it's important, I think that we should be advised to do those before even selecting a major.
Yeah.
Like, I wish that high schools would mandate that before they go to college.
Yep.
And I don't feel like they really focus on the individual nature and strengths and personalities of their students. I think they're trying I know that they were beginning to do that when I was in school. I don't know if they're doing that more so now. I still know a lot of college students that, like, switch majors all the time. They don't know what they're doing. They're kind of freaking out because they don't know what they want. And even though they have career advisors, I think that those career advisors kind of keep them in a little bit of a box. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much more than traditional work. There's so many creative outlets that you can make an income, make a living, and do something you love that isn't always traditional employment. I mean, that's where I come in, and I love non-traditional work. I love showing people how it's not just working for someone else. You can take what you love, work for yourself, and here's how you do it. But I don't think the school system even teaches you how to do that and how to think a little bit more creatively and innovatively on how, it's not one size fits all. And I think that's kind of the brokenness of the education system, is that we try to do a one size fits all approach. It's not working.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with you. And that's also something else that I think is important to realize earlier on, that we think there's one career path. And college is the career path of choice right now, and maybe even graduate school or going to specific colleges and doing specific majors. Now, that is certainly not the case, because luckily for us, we have a world full of people who are all different and enjoy different things and have different skills. And so if we all were doing the same thing, boy, would that be dull, and we wouldn't have enough jobs, right? I mean, that's what's happening now, because so many people are following this one path to what they think is the way to success without giving thought to what works for them. And so figuring this out, that it may be this kind of education or it might be something more creative, but how do we get the schools and the colleges to do that? Yeah, I don't know. That would be a huge shift for them, and maybe those aren't the only resources that we have to get people to go in different careers. Maybe there are some resources outside of those institutions, because they're just so big and there are so many people involved. How do you deal with each individual person in there? That is a limitation. Just like you said, it's a limitation of the system, and maybe people need to be looking elsewhere for some of those opportunities and thoughts and role models outside of those systems to figure out other opportunities.
It is. It's a big one. Like, my boyfriend's parents are educators and stuff. So, like, I've had this conversation a couple times with them, and I'm like, do you even teach your kids? Are teachers equipping kids to develop these soft skills? How much of exposure are they getting to entrepreneurship? Other than fundraising. Fundraising is one form of it, like to learn how to build funds or generate funding for a certain organization. I think that is a great exposure to that. But his dad had said, like, well, no, because teachers aren't entrepreneurs. We don't even know how to think like that. Right. So I feel like it's needed, but, like, because our society is just graduate high school, get your degree, get your job, and live happily ever after. I just feel like that's the promise, but it's not working, and I think that millennials and quarter life, that's what has really led to the quarter life crisis that a lot of us are experiencing, which is, this is not what life was promised. This is not what I was promised after putting all of this work in and money and time. You just feel totally stuck and overwhelmed, and you don't know what to do and how to fix it. And I think companies are coming on board to do something to alleviate that. Mm-hmm. Among millennials, because our turnover is very expensive, and I do think businesses are starting to try to do more of cultural fit and how to work with people in career burnout that aren't satisfied to keep them in the company, but maybe put them in a new area where they're much happier, and then some even will eventually just transition them out to something completely different and away from them. And I think those are the most successful companies that have those in place. Mm-hmm. But that's expensive to implement and stuff. And how do you even do that? But it's catching on.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I would also suggest that it's not a fun thing to think about, but each person needs to take charge of their own life and their own career, and don't wait around for others to solve the problem. Don't wait around for the company to solve it for you or the school system to solve it for you. You need to take charge, and I think you've done that yourself, Stephanie, to create your own really unique position and niche and life for yourself. And people are going to have to do that, whether it is in a traditional workplace or not. It's something that you have to work on to make your life the way you want it to be. Other people aren't going to take that responsibility on for you.
I completely agree, and I said that, and I stressed that. That's how I opened my presentation. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if that's the strongest way to open, but it's my strongest point I'm going to make. The moment you basically put your future, your financial freedom, your well-being in someone else's hands, you lose.
Yeah.
You just completely lose out. And I can't tell you how many coworkers, when I was in traditional work, had the mentality that it's the employer's responsibility to give them a raise and to give them that promotion and to give them the money they want. But once I started learning about entrepreneurship and really developing an entrepreneurial mindset, it was like, no, it's not. It was like, what problem can I solve? If I have an idea, I stopped presenting it as basically everyone had a complaint to make. You need to do this. The company needs to do this. This needs to change. And then I was put on a committee that was like, all right, every idea that you have, we are going to come up with how we are going to contribute to the solution to this problem.
Right.
And if you're not willing to put in the work and collectively as a team to resolve it, then stop complaining about it. Mm-hmm. Like, and I just maybe wasn't the most popular person at first, but it was really effective. We got huge results from that committee and stuff. And I think it had everyone feel like they're contributing even more instead of constantly complaining to upper level management about things. It's like, well, what can we do to fix this and to help them and to make this place better and stronger and more fulfilling for us? And so I thought it was a win-win. I think companies that implement that, it's a good structure and strategy to have. But then there were always the people that just always complained and never did anything to change it.
Yeah,
so.
We talk about some dispositions. Some people just are constantly unsatisfied. But you know what you say is really consistent with what the message is in my book, Flying Without a Helicopter, because it's about how to do this and empower yourself to be resilient and come up with solutions and be creative rather than relying on somebody else hovering over you, taking care of you. So, yeah, I'm in complete alignment with that. And, you know, sometimes it's tough to motivate yourself and have the energy to do all that. But, boy, is it energizing and motivating when you do have that self-empowerment. So working through that and thinking about how to get there and using other resources for people to help you, but not just waiting for them to do it for you.
Yeah, and I can tell you it is. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy. It really sets you apart. Let me just say that. I think it puts you as a top performer. It positions you to be the person that people go to for answers, for solutions. Eventually, when I was there, I had my own supervisor and higher level leadership asking me for strategy and advice. I mean, that's a pretty good position to be in, even though I didn't have the official title as that. And I just think it's very empowering to know that when you take full responsibility for what you want in your life, career, finances, business, relationships, family, whatever, it's the freedom. It might feel restrictive at first, but it really leads to freedom, a lot of freedom. Mm-hmm. So, and enjoyment.
Yeah.
Well, how can people connect with you, Joni?
Well, I've got the website flexibleworksolutions.com. That's my corporate site, and the flyingwithout.com is the direct link to the book, Flying Without a Helicopter, or How to Prepare Young People for Work and Life. I've got all my contact information up there, and I'm also on social media, so you can look me up everywhere.
Awesome. It was a pleasure to talk with you. I really enjoyed connecting with you.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been very inspiring. Thank you. You need to be able to work with your strengths and develop what you need to be successful at your job. But I wouldn't necessarily go and attack something that you're terrible at to try to do it. That just would make you frustrated.
So there you have it. That was Dr. Joni. I really enjoyed this interview. One, because it was a little bit different. It wasn't focused on business or entrepreneurship all that much. And it really focused on the issues that fire me up about the difficulties that millennials face and the challenges that the generational gap has when dealing with each other. I am a millennial myself, and I really love helping empower and equip millennials to thrive in the workplace and to thrive in life. This really was an enjoyable interview for me. Hopefully you liked it too. I'm trusting that you did and that you learned a lot. If you are raising children, go check this out. And I imagine that there's a lot of nuggets and goodness in there for the millennial that might be struggling themselves. If you're a parent, I'm sure there's treasures in there for yourself too. So make sure you check her out over at, is it Lessons from the Workplace, I believe? Yes, Lessons from the Workplace. Connect with her, and all of her links are included in the show notes. If you haven't done so already, make sure that you come on over to movedbypurpose.net, join the mailing list, get in on the goodness going on there, and join the community, join the conversation over there. Let me know how your life has been improved and changed from listening to this podcast. Or if you feel stuck and you need help, let me know the question you need answered, and I will help you through it. Everyone who responds to this by March 15th will get one free coaching session with me. And all who answers also are eligible to win the grand prize of one free coaching package. So all who reply get 1 hour coaching session. That's big. This is a big offer. I would take full advantage of that. But you have to reply to me in an email. You can reply to the newsletter once you hear this, or send me an email. Let me know that you heard about this on the podcast. Also, it's going to be in the email as well, so you can either reply to that. By March 15th, you should be golden. So take full advantage of this opportunity. I wouldn't let it pass you by. Mark your calendar. Take action. Rewards and success go to those who take action. Anyway, I love you all. I'll talk to you all next week.